modern day expression, that is ISKCON, International Society for Krishna Consciousness. He is author of more than 30 books that explain the relevance of Vedic wisdom texts, including the Bhagavad Gita and Ramayana. He is the international author of the world's he is author of world's only daily blog on Bhagavad Gita, that is gitadaily.com. And also, he runs the website called the spiritualscientist.com. He has written more than 5,000 articles on Bhagavad Gita and its application in the practical life. He is a frequently invited speaker at TEDx, World Peace Conference, UNESCO, Intel, Google, Microsoft, Salesforce, Stanford, Princeton, Yale, Harvard, MIT, as well as Cambridge. So, in an entire year, he gives almost 400 talks across 100 cities in 4 continents every year. So, such an esteemed speaker we are fortunate to have amongst us. So we are very, very thankful from the core of our hearts. We thank His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhuji for all the way coming and gracing us. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. We welcome you by loudly chanting 3 times. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Over to you.
Hare Krishna. Am I audible to everyone? So, we'll be handing you a copy of my latest book on the Bhagavad Gita. It is Bhagavad Gita, Prayers Inspired by Bhagavad Gita. So, I'll be reading something from there. I'll ask all of you also to read one of the paragraphs from there, and based on that, we'll be discussing. So, at the end of the class, if you would like to get a copy, you can get one from behind me. Otherwise, you can read class with me right after that. 44. Yeah, 44. Let's begin with some prayers. ॐ ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकाय चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमा ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामी इति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधार श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। And you know, please guide us all that we can understand your words and be empowered to face life's challenges through those words. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for coming today. And so I'll be writing and drawing something on this projector. I'll start by giving a map of what we are going to discuss. And I'll be speaking for about 45 minutes to about 1 hour, and then we will have question answers. And we will be continuing from this tomorrow and day after. So basically, our topic is Gita wisdom for hard times. And I was introduced to the Bhagavad Gita about 30 years ago. Of course, in childhood I knew about it, but it was more a book for memorizing the verses and making my parents feel proud and feeling good about myself, not about the wisdom in itself. But it's about 30 years ago I was introduced. And since that time, I have been studying the Bhagavad Gita from different perspectives. So the Gita itself has 18 chapters and 700 verses, and its flow is quite complex in its own way. But in this session, we will be trying to trace the flow from a particular perspective. At the start of the Gita is spoken by Krishna to Arjuna. So at the start of the Gita, Arjuna is having, in one sense, two problems. He is confused. Confused is at the level of the intelligence, and he is discouraged. So confused means we don't know what to do, and discouraged means we don't feel like doing anything. So at the level of, in Sanskrit, what is called buddhi and mana. So at the level of the mind, you just feel so discouraged, demoralized, depressed. You have all these things which you often face in life. And then he's also confused. It's just that sometimes we know what is to be done, but we just don't have the energy to do it. But sometimes we just don't know what is to be done. And then it becomes even more confusing or even more bewildering, basically. So at the start of the Gita, Arjuna is confused and discouraged. And that same Arjuna, by the end of the Gita, has become convinced and confident. So at the end, he says, Nashto moha smriti labdha tat prasadan maya achyuta sthitosmi gata sandeha karishe vachanam tava. So Nashto moha smriti labdha. That refers to he's become convinced. Gata sandeha. All my confusion is gone. All my discouragement is gone. Sthitosmi. I'm well situated. So this is the journey that the Gita took Arjuna on. And we will also be trying to go on this journey by focusing on some key concepts from the Gita. So it's from confusion and discouragement to confidence and conviction. So how do we go ahead? So these will be by three broad steps. I summarize them in the acronym ACT. So A is accept. So accept the situation we are in. So it may be that our relationship with somebody close to us is going down very badly. Maybe we are financially unstable. Maybe we are having some health crisis. Or maybe we are just dissatisfied and can't figure out why we are dissatisfied. So whatever be the difficult situation we are in, the first principle is that we need to learn to accept. And we accept that situation by understanding the principle of karma. And that is going to be the first session. We try to understand what karma is, how it works, and how it can help us to gain acceptance. Now, so these are, as you notice, there's three steps in a staircase to go from one stage to another. Now, acceptance alone can lead to passivity. You just accept means what you do or nothing. But that is not the teaching. The second stage is that we'll be discussing tomorrow. That is we commit. Commit by understanding the concept of dharma. So, in the situation that I am in, what can I do? First, I need to accept the situation. Then, after that, I commit to doing something about it. So, now if commitment, so if only acceptance is there, if say this is step one and in step two. So, if there is one without two, that will lead to us becoming passive. And if there is two without one, that will lead to resentment. I am working so hard, but why is this happening to me? I have always been a good person. I've done this, I've done so much. Why don't people recognize me? Why don't people value me? So sometimes I mean, I observed that people who are very, very committed and dedicated, sometimes those people actually have the most pent up anger against others because they feel I have worked so hard, but why don't people value me? Why are things going wrong like this? Why are things going around like that? So we need to accept and commit. And so acceptance, this is the present situation. Accept commits. Commit is that okay, this is the way I want to act right now, by which there can be a better future. And the last step will be transit. Now we may commit to fixing a situation, but sometimes the fixing of the situation can take a long time. And how do we persevere through the long period of commitment? And that we transit by understanding Bhakti. So the third session, I'll be talking about Bhakti. So this is broadly going to act. Krishna tells Arjuna to act, and how to act also is going to be what we'll be discussing. But broadly, these are the three sessions we will discuss. Accept difficult situations by understanding the principle of karma. Commit to doing the right course of action, doing the constructive course of action by understanding dharma. And finally, transcend the entire situation, both the present, the past, and future, by and what transcend means and how to transcend, that also we'll discuss in the third session. So, because these three sessions are related, many of you may have unanswered questions after today's session. And I'll try to answer them today, but what I have observed whenever I conducted this course before is that many of the questions that come today will be answered tomorrow. So, if that's the kind of questions that come, I may not answer them today. I'll request them to wait till tomorrow. But overall, each session can be understood as standalone session. But if you get through all three, then it will be much more of an empowering understanding. So, having taken this path map of what we are going to discuss in these three sessions, let's move forward to the first session about accept. So, accept by understanding the concept of karma. So, in each of these sessions, I will use an acronym called CHIT. CIT. So, C will be I talk about the concept. What does the concept actually mean? Like, what does karma mean? What does dharma mean? What does bhakti mean? Then I will talk about some insights based on that concept. And then finally, we'll have some takeaway. What can we do? How can we apply that in our life right now? So chit also means consciousness. So we become more conscious, we become more aware of what is happening in our life. So, so accept, commit, and transit. Now, we may say this whole structure sounds good. How is this related with the Bhagavad Gita? For many of us, we can all face difficult situations now. Now, broadly, I think Bhagavatam, which is a text which builds on the Bhagavad Gita, it describes or it defines distress, dukkha in very simple terms. It says, Yasmat Priya Priya Yog Sanyog Janma. So basically, for us in our life, there are things which are Priya, things which are desirable, and there are things which are apriya, that which are undesirable. Say you come for this session, maybe there are some people whom you like, you look forward to meeting, and there are some people you don't like. You look forward to they going away, isn't it? So there is the Priya and there is apriya. So basically, what we want is yoga. Yoga is union. What is desirable, we want yoga with that. And what is apriya, we want yoga with that. If we get the desirable and we avoid the undesirable, this is what we consider as sukha. Sukha is, now we can say avoiding the undesirable is not exactly happiness in the positive sense, but at least it's a relief. It's okay, this did happen. So this is what we consider as positive. But unfortunately, what happens is sometimes with the priya we have yoga, and with the apriya we have yoga. that which is just undesirable, you don't want it to happen, that's exactly what happens. And the thing which you want to happen, it does not happen. Now, generally, this is what we think of as distress. And there is truth to that, no doubt. So, getting the desirable is happiness, avoiding and getting the undesirable is unhappiness. Now, this can happen at many different levels. So, what the Gita will do is that it will help us to see this. And in the last session, in the transcend part, it will also actually redefine that what we think of as desirable, is it actually always desirable? What we think as undesirable, is it actually always undesirable? That redefining part we'll do later. But at this point, now when we say something undesirable happens, and that is distress. So we are talking about Gita wisdom for hard times. So hard times means basically something desirable has gone away from us, something undesirable has come to us. So the Gita starts with such a situation. So I'll talk about the context of the Gita now. That broadly, there is when something bad happens to us. We talk about distress. This distress can be at three levels. There is adversity, and then there is atrocity. So adversity and atrocity. What does it mean? How many of you have heard these two words, atrocity and adversity? How many of you think the two words mean the same thing? How many of you think the two words are different? How many of you think the difference does not make any difference? So, those of you who think that there's a difference, any thoughts about what is the difference? Yes, perfect. Thank you. So, if our power supply goes off, that is adversity. If we come to know that our neighbor has cut off our power supply, that is atrocity. So, adversity is natural, you could say. Natural in the sense that it comes from nature. Atrocity is intentional. So I will also be illustrating this teachings, what we will do is this ACT outline based on the Mahabharata. So if we will be talking about how accepting, committing and transcending can lead one on a higher track, and refusing to do that can take one on a downward track. So basically, we'll be talking about ACT. This is the trajectory that the Pandavas follow, broadly speaking. And the Kauravas follow the opposite trajectory. So what is that opposite trajectory? I'll discuss that as we move forward. So we all, if we consider in the Pandavas' life, there was both adversity and atrocity. What was the adversity in their life? Yes, when they were very small, their father passed away. Now, what was the atrocity in their life? Sorry? Yes, Bhima was poisoned, and then they were attempted to be burnt alive. That Draupadi was dishonored. So all this is atrocity. Now, among these two, which is more difficult to bear? Atrocity. How could you do like this? How could any human being treat anyone else like that? So it's much more difficult to bear. And Bhishma Pitama talks about these both these experiences. He's talking with Yudhishthira Maharaj. He says, "Aho kashtam, aho anyayam, yadyuyam dharma." So, aho kashtam, aho anyaya. That is, that kashta is like the adversity. Anyaya is atrocity. Now, in both these cases, we could say that if we are here, adversity is coming upon us, and atrocity is also coming upon us. So both of these are bad. However, there is something worse. See, what could be worse? Life hurts us or people hurt us. But Arjuna is actually facing a worse situation. And I will call that as agony. Agony means that basically we have to do something that is going to hurt us. That we just don't have a good choice. Bad things happen to us, bad things are done to us, and bad things have to be done by us. Especially for a person who is responsible. That is extremely difficult. So, what is the difficulty Arjuna has to face? That when Arjuna is about to start the war, at that time, the unwanted situation that he is in is that he is pulled into opposite directions. Into opposite directions. So, what happens? That Arjuna has come to the fight and he comes as a Kshatriya to fight the war. And as a Kshatriya, his duty is to fight. But then when he comes in the middle of the battlefield, he sees Bhishma, Drona, Pramuktaha, Sarvesham cha Mahikshitam. He says Bhishma and Drona are there. And now he has to fight against them. Now, at an intellectual level, he knew that he would have to fight against them. And he had fought against them once at Virat. But at that time, there was no intention to kill him. At that time, the intention had simply been to teach them a lesson, to show them, especially show Duryodhan their power. And hopefully Duryodhan would come to his senses and then he would no longer, they would no longer have to fight. But now, from the Kurukshetra war, one side was not going to go back. So for him, Bhishma and Drona were not just elders. They were the elders from whom he had learned archery. They were the elders for whose pleasure he had learned archery. And now these would be the same elders that he would have to kill with the same archery. This was the stuff of nightmares. So he was in a situation that he just did not want to be. So if he considers that I am a Kuru Vamshaja, I am a member of a Kuru dynasty, then if I'm a member of the Kuru dynasty, I shouldn't fight. These are my elders, this is my family, this is my dynasty. I should not fight. And two things were just pulling him in opposite directions. I just don't know. So I was just in UK for 1 month too. I came back uh, today morning itself. So I was giving this talk in Manchester. And after the talk, one person who has just been introduced to me, and he told me that actually I am facing this very critical. He said that I have two twin sons, and both of them are very good at studies. But I have only enough money to send one of them to a top college. So now who do I send? That seems tearing me apart. It's like whatever choice we do, somebody is going to feel hurt. Sometimes life puts us in that situation, it's extremely painful. So when no option seems to be a good option, and every path ahead seems to be a path of darkness, a path of distress. So this is not just about what life has done to us. It's like if somebody gets a terminal cancer and they have to die. That's very painful. Now if we come to know that some company where we were working, they had that would so somebody getting cancer would be adverse. But if they come to know that the factory where they were working, there was carcinogenic chemicals, and the company just to keep it profit did not tell people about it. That would be atrocity. That would be much more. But imagine there's a parent and they have two children and both of them are cancer and they have enough enough money for treating only one of them. It's unbelievable. So when we talk about Gita wisdom for hard times, the Gita was itself spoken originally when Arjuna was having extremely hard. The hard time was so hard, in fact, that he collapsed. He collapsed completely. Yes. Gandhivam sramsate hastat tvakchaiva paridahayate. He says, Gandhi is slipping from my hand. I just can't resist. I don't want to be here. He says, and finally, being unable to cope with the situation, he says, I can't, I don't know what to do. I just won't find it. So Arjuna, actually, there was a downward trajectory. His first, it was emotional. How can I fight against my enemy? As I said, there was emotional agony. But beyond that emotional agony, there was an ethical dilemma. Ethical dilemma means that at a ethical level, at a level of right or wrong. Like earlier, I said emotional difficulty means I know what is the right thing to do, but it's very hard to do. Say if somebody we close to us is they are addicted to something and they are in big trouble. They keep asking money from us, and we keep giving money to them. And instead of using that for recovery or for their family, they keep using it for their addiction. At a particular time, we have to say no to it. It's not easy. And at least at that time, we know what is the right thing, although it's difficult. But as I said, there are situations where we just don't know what is the right thing. So Arjuna had an ethical dilemma. And that ethical dilemma went to the point of being a trauma. And he just collapsed. Now, when he collapsed, how does the Gita help him to handle this situation? And when we are put in situations that are just where it's not just a bad thing happening to us, that it is we who have to face that situation. And facing that situation, we have to do something back. There's just no way out. So this is where the Gita introduces the concept of karma. So till now I was giving more the context of the Gita, but still in the CIT framework, we are in this. So now I'll start by asking, when we use the word karma, what do you think the word means to you? Any thoughts? Sorry, you can raise your hand. Yes, please. Yes, karma means duty. That's one meaning. Karma means consequences. Yes. Yeah. Good deeds. Karma means good deeds. Yes. Actions. Yes. So we all have to do our karma. Karma is something. Okay, the consequences. The consequences can lead to something in that sense. Yes. Anything else? Yeah. Okay. The system of accountability. That's it. Here we use the word law of karma. So yes, karma has lots of meanings like this. So basically, karma has four meanings, which can be summarized in the acronym arcs. Arcs means karma refers to the action that we do. So we all have to do karma. Krishna says, for example, in Niyatam Kuru Karmatvam Karma Jyayo Your Karma. Everybody has to do your karma. So karma also refers to the reaction that we do. So we all have to deal with our karma. That is it refers to the reaction. Now karma also refers to the connection between the two. That means the principle of karma, the law of karma, that action will lead to reaction. That action will lead to reaction. And connection is also referred to as karma. And finally, karma also refers to selection. That we need to select what is the right thing. So this sense of selection of karma is what we talk about duty or good deeds. And this selection is what leads one to dharma. So this meaning I'll discuss tomorrow. But all these four are meanings of karma. And in the Bhagavad Gita, the word karma is used in both these senses, in all these senses. And we'll discuss discuss them one by one. So now, at a basic level, the idea of karma is that action leads to some result, and this is a universal principle of existence. We all function in life based on this. If our clothes are dirty, then what happens is, okay, we wash my clothes. So the action will lead to result. If we come to, if a child has a room and a child room is untidy, why did you not tidy your room? You did not do an action, therefore a particular result has not. This is how we always operate. So in that sense, the action, reaction, action and result principle is universal. It's not, it's just the universal way we function. It is also the basis of law and justice. That when we hold people responsible for their actions, it is the basis of law and justice. Now, the, actually, in some ways, this is also the basis of science. Now, in science, it doesn't exactly use the word action result. It uses the word cause and effect. That every action that we do, it has a particular result. So, cause and effect. Now, when we understand this broad thing, that action will lead to result. So generally, the way I started by talking about we want some desirable results, and if I want something desirable, what should I do to get something? So if I want a bigger house, then what should I do? Maybe I have to take some loan. We have to save some money. Maybe I have to relocate to a place where houses are cheaper. So the idea is that there is a certain result I want, and what action do I do to get that result? So we operate based on this principle. This is universal. Now, while we always operate based on this understanding of this principle that actually leads to results, the problem is that things don't always work out. Sometimes it may happen that we may put in work worth 100 and we get result worth 10. Sometimes we work in a project, and when we work in that project, we do most of the work in the project, and at the last moment, somebody else swoops in and steals all the credit. And then our name comes just as a footnote. And we feel enraged. Why? I did so much work. So the principle of karma at one level, we always accept it. But there are times where it just doesn't. And that is when we, we become confused, we become disappointed. Arjuna had always tried to live a virtuous life. He always tried to make good choices. He always tried to be respectful to his elders, respectful to Dharma. And yet now he was in such a terrible situation. So what do we do at this place? If you can go to the book we are in, it's actually, we'll come to this verse later. We'll go to, you can read this. This is page number 28. So in this book, basically, I have taken the verses of the Gita, rendered them in English poetry, and then there's a one sentence prayer based on the summary prayer, with affirmation, and then there are there's one page prayers. There are prayers for various occasions. So like you can repeat after. Oh Lord of my heart, let me never lose heart. So let's recite this verse. एवमुक्त्वार्जुन सङ्ख्ये रथोपस्थ उपाविशत् विसृज्य सशरं चापं शोकसंविघ्नमानसः Thus speaking, Arjuna, torn inside, set his bow and arrows aside. Upon his chariot seat he sang, his heart agreed. Anyone like to read the first paragraph? Yeah. Continue.
My dear Lord, the challenges that the world throws upon me sometimes can be so complicated as to be overwhelming, stultifying, and paralyzing. Just as Arjuna cast aside his bow, unwilling and unable to fight, many are the times when I have felt like casting aside my metaphorical bow, losing my will to fight against problems that seem unfair, unending, and unsolvable.
So problems, if they come, overwhelming is too much to do. Stultifying is you just don't know what to do, and then paralyzing is just collapse. That's what happened to Arjuna. And we all may feel like that. The Bhagavad Gita is a historical book, but it is not just historical. What is happening there, it also represents what happened in our life. Our body is like a chariot. Just as Krishna was with Arjuna, we are also with Krishna in our heart. We'll talk about that later. But basically, just as Arjuna put aside his bow saying, I can't fight. Because we also feel, I just can't. How long can I go on like this? I just can't. So we start feeling like that. And generally, this happens when again and again we are putting in efforts, but we are not getting results. See, sometimes if we put in 100 and we get 10 result, that is difficult. But if we put in 100 and we get minus 10, like we put in a lot of effort and rather than getting credit, we get blame. That feels even more unbearable. We put in 100 and we get minus 100. It's like we do a lot for that person, somebody else, and instead of helping us at a time of need, that person turns and stabs us. So that becomes unbearable. So basically, this is a time when life just does not make sense. And at time we start feeling, what is the point of living? What is the point of doing anything? What is the point of being a good person? What is the point of trying to do anything good? Or what is the point of even doing anything for that? So when this happens, that life seems unfair. At that time, we basically have one choice to make. Or we could say that we have two choices, but there are two aspects of one choice. That life is senseless. Life is senseless, or life will make sense in future. That I can't make sense of this right now. I don't know why this is happening, but maybe there is some sense over here, and that sense will be revealed in the future. Now that is the only choice we have. Now, if we look at the Kauravas and the Pandavas, we could say both could have felt life was unfair to them. The Pandavas, they lost their father when their father was they were small. Now, Duryodhan could have felt, why did my father have to be blind? If my father had not been blind, he would have been the king, and I would have been straight become the king. So why did I have to be born to a blind father? So both of them, we could say, at the start, there was something unfair, and everybody, in some way or the other, has to deal with life's unfairness. So now, how we deal with it is one of the most important decisions we'll make in life. Many of you know that I have polio, so I need crutches for walking. When I was about one, my mother took me. We were staying in a small town in Maharashtra, in Chandrapur. It's quite small. So my mother took me to a polio clinic to get the polio vaccine. But because it was a small town, the power supply would sometimes go off. And the previous night, the power supply had gone off, and the fridge in which the vaccines had been kept had got heated up. And neither the attendant nor the physician noticed it. So when I was given that vaccine, because the germs were too much in it, instead of preventing polio, it ended up causing polio. Now, I don't remember any of this, but when I was about 2.5 or 3, a distant relative had come to our home and she was consoling my mother, saying, "It's so sad your son got polio." And I remember my mother's voice, very calm, clear, confident. She said, "Whatever he lacks physically, God will provide him intellectually." Now, I don't know why she said that, whether I had shown some intellectual ability at that time, or it was her hope, it was her dream, it was her prayer, it was her blessing. Whatever, somehow those words stayed with me. Not the God part that came later, but the intellectually part stayed with me. And as I grew up, I did notice that I could remember things quite quickly. I could articulate things well, and I started growing intellectually. Now there was a kid in our neighborhood. He was also in my same school. He was brilliant at everything athletic, and I was zero at everything athletic. So he would make fun of me. He would mock me. He would use words like langda, cripple, and I was more annoyed than hurt by it because I didn't identify with my physical side so much. But still, I was annoyed. And one day, his mother, my mother approached me and she said that his mother had approached her. She said that he was struggling in maths. And because I was good at maths, she wanted me to help him in maths. And even before my mother completed the sentence, I said, "No, I'm not going to help him." So then my mother said, "No, you should help him. They are our neighbors and he's your friend." I shook my head even more. He's not my friend. But my mother insisted, so I relented. And then I was trying to help him understand basic arithmetic. And he had an impressive physique. But after spending about 15-20 minutes with him, I realized that there seemed to be nothing inside his head. Now, one part of me wanted to laugh at him, just as the way he had laughed at me. But something stopped me. And maybe after a long time I articulated that way, but somehow that some level of understanding had come up that just as I have a physical limitation that is just beyond my control, similarly he has an intellectual limitation that is beyond his control. Now, if he laughs at my physical limitation and I laugh at his intellectual limitation, now how are we really different? So, I could say that I got this polio and this is unfair. And yes, that is true. What I could say, what did I do to deserve this polio? And that's one way of looking at it. But then I could also turn the question around and say, what did I do to deserve this intellectual ability that I have? Is that life is in the big picture fairly unfair. Fairly unfair means in some areas we get worse than what we deserve, or we get worse than others because what we deserve often we decide by comparing with others. And in some areas we do get more than what we deserve. We have some gifts more than others. So the single biggest decision we will make in our life is what are we going to focus on? If we focus on how life is unfair to us, we will go down a dark track. We will become resentful, we'll become negative, we'll become bitter. And unfortunately, this was the path that the Kauravas chose. Or we can choose focus on how life is fair to us. And if we do that, we can become resourceful. Resourceful means we can use whatever resources we have and we can create a better life. And this is the path that the Pandavas choose. So basically, for all of us in our life, there will be things which will not make sense. There will be things which will seem unfair. So there will be people whom we are kind to them and they are just mean to us. It will always be like that. There will always be people like that. It's said there are two kinds of people in the world. Some people bring happiness wherever they go, and some people bring happiness whenever they go. The people come into a room, and the whole oxygen from the room seems to go away. Everybody becomes tense, and every word that is spoken with them, it seems like, am I walking into a minefield now? Is there going to be an explosion? And when that person leaves, we feel such relief. Everybody will have some or the other people in their life who fall in that category. Now, it is such that sometimes the same person may move from one category to another category also. And we ourselves may be in one category for some people and the other category for some people. The life is complicated. But the point is that it's easy to look at how life is unfair. Now, I don't want to be flippant and say that it's not necessary if I consider life that it is it is a 50% fair and 50% unfair. Life is not that neat. Sometimes it may be that the situation we are going to, it may feel as if 95% of it is unfair and only 5% of it is fair. Now, this is difficult enough to deal with. This is what leads to the question, why do bad things happen to good people? I was in Australia and I was giving a talk on this topic. Why do bad things happen to good people? There's one person who said, I have a more burning question than that. What is that question? He says, I don't care why bad things happen to good people. I want to know why good things happen to bad people. Isn't it? So quite often, for us, what happens is that we feel, okay, if I am here, if I am in this situation, that is bad. But somebody right next to us seems to be in a situation where almost 95% seems to be right with them, and very little seems to be wrong. And so you could say being in this situation is bad, is difficult, but this situation just seems to be unbearable. And unfortunately, this kind of comparison has become very much aggravated by social media. And this is especially true among teenagers. Just a few days ago, Meta, Facebook, they had 2019, they had commissioned a study to investigate what is the effect of social media usage among teenagers. Now, many studies have found that teenagers, the more they use social media, they tend to get insecure, depressed. Like I post some photo and it gets only few likes. Somebody else posts the photo and they get so many more likes. So they, right from 2019 itself, they found that they had been doing a study across the world, and their own studies found that people, especially teenagers, they tend to become, the more social media they use, the more depressed they become. But they completely bury the studies. And just recently they have come out. So one of the persons who conducted the study, I said, this is, see social media usage, that it is worse than smoking. Nowadays everything is compared to smoking, so we don't have to necessarily focus on comparison on that particular point. But my point is that what happens on social media, we see the best of other people's lives. See, nobody puts their miseries. Sometimes people put their miseries also for sensational purposes. But most of the times people put the best moments of their life. And while we may also put the best moments of our life on social media, but often others' best moments seem to be much better. The grass seems to be always greener on the other side. And even if we have had best moments, somehow our mind tends to remember our worst moments. Say if we go to some party, we go to get some celebration, we go to some event, and 10 people treat us very warmly. If one person treats us a little rudely, that's what we remember. So now this is a normal human tendency, and we'll talk about how to deal with that. But my point is that sense of unfairness, sense that life is treating me badly, that becomes more and more aggravated in today's world, because there is so much, not just opportunity to compare, it's almost like a pressure to compare yourself. So This can create a lot of problems. So I was talking over here that when we face the situation, that when we face life's unfairness, we have two options. Either to life is senseless, or there is some sense to life which I am not able to figure out. And that is where karma comes in. So, what is the principle of karma over here? That while the basic principle of karma is action leads to result. However, what karma tells us is that Krishna later on in the Gita will say Gahana Karmano Gati. So, we like to read the next paragraph. We will feel life feels unfair. Would anyone else like to read? Yeah. So you can read.
Please, O Lord, bless me so that the emotion of the moment does not become the basis for decisions whose consequences extend far beyond the moment. Let me remember that however messed up things may be around me and even inside me, still, you are in charge of both the outer world and the inner world. Even if I lose the will to fight a particular battle in this world, let me never lose the will to connect with you.
That we never lose the will to connect. So what does this mean? That when we are facing challenges, it's not just when we lose. It's especially when we feel we are losing and it feels unfair to us. Why is this happening? So broadly speaking, one way we're going to discuss this is, see, our whole life story can be summarized in acronym C. C is what? We face situations in life. Situations are external. And the situations lead to some emotions inside us. And those emotions lead us to certain actions. Situations come in our life, they lead to some emotions inside us, and they lead to some actions. Now, if we have negative situations, they will lead to negative emotions. And that may lead us to negative actions. Now, ideally speaking, what we would like is we create a wall over here so that negative situations don't come in our life. And we can try to do that, say, if in future we lose our jobs, then we have some savings. So the more time I spend in America, outside India, one big difference between Indians and Western people is that Western people just don't have a habit of saving. It's like there- there's people who they just live paycheck to paycheck, but that doesn't mean they're poor. They may have two, three cars, they may have three, four TVs, they may have many smartphones. They're not very smart, unfortunately, but they just no habit to save. So the point is that we can try to prevent situations from coming in our life, but we can't always prevent situations from coming. So what we would like to do is, if situations come, we try to create a wall so that those situations don't provoke very strong emotions inside us. And even if those emotions are provoked, we try to create some wall by which we don't act on those emotions. And even if we act on those emotions, we ensure that those actions are within boundaries. So, say, what do I mean by this? Say, suppose somebody loses opportunity. Maybe they got a competitive exam, and in that competitive exam they could have done very well, and they do poor. Now we don't want that situation to come. Study well, prepare well, and that situation won't come. But suppose that situation comes in now, then it's that okay, these things happen. They're bad, but let's learn and improve. But we could get very depressed. We could start feeling very much down because of that. And okay, sometimes we do feel down because of that. But what is worse is when we feel so down, it's many times when people turn towards addiction, they think alcoholism or drugs. I just came from, I was in London, and for the first time I saw, I mean, it was obvious, but first time I noticed that there are so many advertisements for vaping. The smoking has stopped, but vaping has become enormously popular. It's almost, uh, it's like the vaping devices are treated like another electronic gadget. So all electronic shops have vaping devices I don't know, is it like that in India also? How many of you know what is vaping? Okay, you don't know, so don't worry about it. You're fortunate. So smoking, the vaping is like an electronic replacement of smoking. There's a propaganda that it is much safer. How much it is, time will tell. But but anyway, so the thing is that many times when people turn towards some bad habits, it's not just because they lack self-control. It's also they're feeling bad about life and they want something which will make them feel good quickly. And then somebody may smoke, somebody may drink, but then they might very well become addicted. So what happens is, suppose somebody faces a loss in their life. So what I'm trying to talk about is that we want to have the first wall we are trying to construct is that when something bad happens, let's learn to accept the bad. We're trying to see how we can accept the bad gracefully. So if that doesn't happen, the emotion comes at that particular time. Now what happens in our life is the situations are reversible. The situation will come. Today I may fail in an exam, tomorrow I'll pass an exam. Failing an exam is not good. Losing a job is not that good. It, there's something positive about the West also. In the West, I have not met till any non-Indian person who till now told me I am jobless. The way they describe it is I am between jobs. I'm between jobs. It's like you're traveling from one place to another. I'm between cities. So it's like I'm between jobs. So they probably have not experienced the crushing competition that is there in India. And they said, okay, I lost my job. I'll get another one. No big deal. But the thing is, situations are reversible. It may not be easy to reverse, but they're reversible. Emotions are also reversible. Today I may feel terrible. Tomorrow I could feel better. However, if we take actions, actions can be irreversible. Actions can be irreversible. So, no matter how bad situations come in our life, no matter how bad our emotions are that we feel inside, if we take certain actions, that can become irreversible. Say, a student fails in an important exam. They will feel very bad about it. And that's understandable. But the students start thinking, I am a loser, I'm a terrible person. The student feels like that to such an extent, thinks, let me end my life. Now that would be devastating. And that is irreversible. So basically, what we want to do is, when we are talking about accepting situations, bad things happen in our life, at that time, we will feel bad. But we want to avoid doing something that is irreversible. So if we consider, I was talking about the Pandavas and Kauravas, even Karna had something unfair in his life. He was born in royalty, but because of circumstances, his mother had to abandon him. And then he found himself in a situation where Duryodhan accepted him as a friend and gave him a kingdom. Maybe at that time he didn't know Duryodhan was such a bad person. And he naturally had a rivalry with Arjuna, because both of them were great archers. But there are times, and then he was not allowed to compete in Draupadi's Swayamvar, so he could have had some negative feelings about her. All that is understandable. But in the gambling match, it was Karna who suggested that drag Draupadi in and have her swim. And it is Karna who said that she has a woman who has 5 husbands, she's already a prostitute. And to his credit, Karna regrets this. And he says that in trying to please Duryodhan, I went too far. He speaks this to Krishna when Krishna has come as Shanti Dut. He also speaks this to Bhishma. But unfortunately, he doesn't listen to Krishna's proposal. He does not come to Krishna's side. He has crossed a line that has gone too far. Duryodhan also, when they try to humiliate Draupadi, and then after that, they try to humiliate Krishna by try to arrest him in the same assembly. It goes too far. We'll talk about that later. But my point is, everybody can have reasons why they feel bad. But no matter how bad we feel, our actions need to be in certain boundaries. So if we take certain actions, they can become irreversible. So when we are talking about accepting by understanding karma, what we try to understand is that I may face difficult situations. Let's complete reading this and then go to read the last paragraph.
Just as you bless Arjuna with the wisdom to see light by the darkness, bless me, O Lord, so that I can find shelter in your words and let them become my guidance light when the world around me envelopes me in bleeding darkness. And when my own mind confound the darkness, grant me, O Lord, I beg you the remembrance that the light coming from you is greater than the darkness coming at me from outside and from inside.
Yes. So for us, life can seem very dark at times. So that is, darkness coming from outside is the situations are there, and the darkness coming from inside is the emotions are there. Now both can happen to us, but at that time, somewhere we have to turn towards light. So what is that light we turn towards? That is the wisdom of the Gita. So the key part of the wisdom of the Gita that talks about is when we talk about karma. They said that action leads to reaction. That's our result. That's the principle we work upon. But what the Gita explains is that it is not so simple. Yes, action leads to result, but the fact is that there is present action and there is past action. So the results that come are often a combination of present action and past action. When I was introduced to Bhagavad Gita about 30 years ago, I was traveling with one's. I also wanted to study and learn the Bhagavad Gita and see how to speak it. So I was traveling with a senior devotee. He was a very polite and friendly and very accessible person. He would answer my questions, he would answer anyone's questions. And I had traveled to one place, and there one person came and asked him a question, and he completely neglected it. And the person was trying to gain attention, and he called me, and he said, "You had asked that question. I had not time to answer. He started answering my question." I found it a little weird. And he called somebody else and started talking with him. And this person was trying to get his attention, but was not getting attention. So finally, I asked him, "You- I found it odd that you neglected that person." He said that I have come here before, and many times I have come, and each time this person he asked long-winded questions. His question itself sometimes goes for 10 minutes. Some people ask questions to gain knowledge. Some people ask questions to show knowledge. Isn't it? And at the end of it also, he just finds a trivial technical point to argue with and he just doesn't accept it. He said that if I spend time with him, then I won't be able to do justice to all the other people who have attended or attending with him. That's why I was avoiding. So then, so in terms of that interaction, he seemed rude. But if you look at a bigger picture, he was not rude. He was just responding intelligently to the situation. So what karma does for us is basically action and result. This is true, but karma says the picture is not only this much. The picture is much bigger. The picture extends backward and the picture extends forwards. And we also understand this in various areas of our life. Let's say if two people are playing a drum or a mridanga, and they come to participate in some kirtan or auditions for some concert, and say one of them has practiced for 10 minutes before coming, and the other has practiced for 10 years, and both of them play them. Externally, the hands might be going to the same places, but the first person, the second person who has played practice for 10 years, the kirtan organizer, the concert organizer will say more, more, and the person who has practiced for 10 minutes will say no more. So now the action is the same, but the result is not just because of that action. So the results that we get in our life are results of past actions also. So the basic principle of action leads to results is true, but sometimes it could be I have A to R, but it could be, if this is AN, or let's say this is A3, then it could be A2, it could be A1. There could be multiple actions from the past that have contributed to this. And conversely, sometimes actions can also have multiple reasons. R1, R2, R3. Say somebody is fired from a job. If they lose that job, they do something wrong in that job and they're fired. They lose that job. But somebody does something criminal and they're fired from a job. Then that might lead to a red mark on their profile itself. And then that one action may prevent them from getting a job anywhere in the future. That one action can have multiple results also. So the point that actions can have the action result principle is true, but the picture can be much bigger. So that is the basic principle of karma. That actions, the principle of action result is always true, but the scope is much bigger than what people see. So now I mentioned earlier that we all remember times when say we put in 100 and we got a result of 10. But if we are honest, if we, there are probably incidents in our life when we put in effort worth 10 and we got a result worth 100. Maybe we joined a project when it was nearing its completion and we did a little bit work and the project became spectacularly successful and we were celebrated as one of the winning members of the winning team. I think in 1983 when India won the World Cup, there was one player who didn't play a single match throughout the World Cup and still his picture was there in the World Cup winning team. So life does also treat us. We might remember when we were growing up, maybe somebody was a bully who in our neighborhood terrorized us. But maybe there's a friend or a relative or teacher who is especially kind to us. So basically, life, it is worse for us in some ways, it is better for us in some ways. So now, what do we do in this situation? So this right now, I'm in the part of, I already moved to the part of insights. Because the concept was action leads to results. But the insight part, CIT acronym I'm discussing, that the insight is that the connection between action and result is not that simple. It can extend much bigger. And this is where the Gita goes further and says that our life is just one phase in our life. So we may carry actions from our previous life also. And say when we enter, so if this is my present life, lifetime. So I had a previous life and I'll have a future life. And in each life when we come, if I'm here right now, then when I enter into this life, I have a cloud of karma, which is hovering above. And this karma cloud is what we can call as destiny, daiva, kismet, whatever is the word different traditions use for it. Now, from this karma cloud, basically we get a major installment at birth. And some of it is negative, some of it is positive. That maybe somebody is born in India, in such a poor country, and maybe that is negative. Somebody is born in America or somebody is born in Europe. That is relatively there's not that much financial anxiety. Things are changing. There's financial anxiety, but those are welfare states. In Europe, especially, if you don't have a job or if you don't get a job that you like, you can be unemployed and the government will pay you for as long as you. So now it's not the most productive way of running a society, but you could say they are welfare states. So the point is that in some ways they're very positive, but in some ways you're born in. I was talking with a devotee who does outreach in American schools. He said normally, he says India, he's from India, now he's settled in America. He said that in India when kids meet each other, where do your parents stay? Or do you stay this place, that place? He said in America, kids, they meet, the first question they ask each other is, with which parent do you stay? Your mother or your father? So it's no laughing matter, unfortunately. And I'm not criticizing America for that. Why relationships fall apart is a complex issue. But my point is that there may be physical comfort over there, but in the Western world, being in a stable, growing up in a stable two-parent home, that itself is a privilege, and not many people have that privilege. So everywhere we go, there are some positives and some negatives. So the way place where we are born is a combination of positive and negative. So for Duryodhan, the positive was he was born in royal comfort. The negative was that he did not have a clear claim to the kingdom. For the Pandavas, the positive was that they were born amongst sages, that they had loving parents at least in their childhood. They had sages who taught them wisdom. They got good samskaras. But then, because their father had retired, so they didn't again have a clear claim to it. And because their father passed away, they became orphans. So the point is, life is a combination of positive and negative for both. And throughout our life also, there are some times when something positive comes to us, and there are times when some negative comes to us. And like that, life alternates. So what I mean by positive and negative comes to us is that when something negative comes to us, that means we may put in effort worth 100, but if the past karma is negative, then you might get result worth 10. Sometimes we put in effort worth 10, and we might get result worth 100 also, because the past karma is positive. So in Greek mythology, there is a term called the Midas touch. Any of you have heard this word Midas touch? What does it mean? Yes, you touch something, it turns into gold. So I was in Florida, I was giving a talk on destiny and karma. So one young man came to me and he asked me, have you heard of this Midas touch? In different parts of the world, they pronounce it differently, Midas touch or Midas touch, whatever. He said, yeah. So he said, I think I have got the reverse Midas touch. He said, whatever I touch seems to fall apart. So I told him, with all due respect, don't be so proud of yourself. So what I meant is that nobody has the capacity to destroy everything around. And it's just that sometimes we go through a bad phase in life. So that bad phase, it is temporary. And this is the single most important one, the takeaway I'm going to talk about. That often the principle of karma is presented as a philosophy of judgment. And there is some truth to that, but the key mood of the Bhagavad Gita, of the Bhagavatam, of the Ramayana, of the Mahabharata, is not that karma is a philosophy of judgment. It is a philosophy of encouragement. What is the difference between judgment and encouragement? Judgment means, you have done something bad, that's why you are suffering. Suffer now. But if that were the focus, then it would be patently unfair to subject someone to suffering without telling them what they did to have to suffer. If we are fired from a company, if we are fired from our job, and we have given no explanation why we are fired, we consider that outrageous. But that's how karma seems to work. Now it's interesting that although Krishna is with Arjuna, and Krishna tells Arjuna that Bahuni me vatitani janmani tavacha Arjuna, that both of us have lived many lives. Tani ham veda sarvani atvam vedha parantam. I remember all of them, you don't remember any of them. But still, although Krishna says this, Krishna does not give Arjuna any flashback. In your past life, you are so and so, and Bhishma was so and so, and Drona was so and so, and he did this, and you did this, and he did this, and that's why you have to fight. Now, Krishna does not give this, and Arjuna also does not ask this. So the idea is that overall, I haven't seen anywhere in scripture where someone is suffering and others tell them you are suffering because of your own karma. So when Draupadi is dishonored, nobody tells her it's because of your own karma you are suffering. When Sita is abducted, nobody says you must have done something because of which Ravana came and abducted. Nowhere do we see that. When Prithu Maharaj has his citizens coming to him and saying that, oh, we are starving, there's a famine in the kingdom. He didn't say it's your own bad karma because of this. No, that is not what he does. That I'll discuss tomorrow when I talk about karma. But the point of karma is that our how is it a philosophy of encouragement? That our actions matter, even if they don't seem to matter. Our actions matter, even if they don't seem. So when we are going through a phase of bad karma, so I may be doing good, but still I may not be getting good results. But that doesn't mean my actions are not important. My actions are still important. And the actions will produce good results. It may take some time, but the results will come. So the Bhagavatam specifically, but even the Mahabharata, they do talk about this question of why do bad things happen to good people. We see the Pandavas are good people. Lord Ram himself is a good person. But rather than going into some elaborate karmic history of why those bad things happen to them, they change the question. Question is, when bad things happen to good people, what do good people do? What do good people do? And that answer leads to that they practice dharma and they practice bhakti. That is what we will discuss in tomorrow's session. But broadly, the takeaway is that when we are going through a bad phase, don't be discouraged. Don't lose hope. When we are going through a hard time, know that it is a phase. You may feel this will never end, but nothing lasts forever. Everything will things will become easier with time. So accepting the opposite of accepting is either denying or resenting. Denying is not happening with me. That is not very helpful. Resenting is why is this happening? Why this happening? But now accepting does not mean passivity. Accepting basically means what? Accepting means stop fighting with reality or stop fighting with the present. Stop fighting with the present. Now that does not mean that the present has to continue to the future. We can do some things to change the future, but stop fighting with the present. This is how things are, and they may be bad in some way, they can be good in some ways. So this is what. So once we stop fighting with the present, so much of our emotional energy gets released, or it's getting consumed and wasted. They're fighting with the present. That is released, and then we become free to act in other areas of life, to choose more productive avenues for our actions. So Krishna, when he tells Arjuna, Tam Stikshasva Bharata, what he tells him is tolerate. So you cannot avoid it. The war is here, you have to fight it. If you give in to the emotion and you don't fight the war, what is going to happen? You may decide that you want to fight, but are you going to persuade Bhima to not fight? And without you, if the Pandavas are going to fight, they will suffer. And if they die when you are not there to protect them, you will not be able to live yourself. If you decide not to fight and somehow all the Pandavas decide not to fight and somehow you get Duryodhan to also stop attacking you, still Duryodhan may spare you just because Bhishma, Drona, elders stop it. But Bhishma will go, Duryodhan will go after everyone who supported you in the war. He's a mean-minded person. Both were trying to get people, both were trying to get allies on their side before the war. And if you hear that Drupada is being persecuted or Virat is being persecuted, and you have renounced Kshatriya Dharma, again you will not be able to do this. So don't, a situation, emotion, action, don't do actions that will make things worse. Don't overreact to situations and do things which will make the overall situation worse. So acceptance is about avoiding knee-jerk reactions that will make things worse. But now, what kind of action? How do we respond? We say don't react, respond. So acceptance is about not reacting. But how do we go about responding? That we'll discuss tomorrow when we talk about dharma. So I'll summarize what I discussed today. Our topic was Gita for hard times, and within that, we're talking about karma. So broadly, the the first point I talked about is the overview. We are discussing about 3 steps by which Arjuna went from being confused and discouraged to becoming confident and convinced. He was convinced intellectually, so confused intellectually, discouraged emotionally. So he was convinced intellectually and confident emotionally. So how did this happen? So that we talk about 3 things: A, C, D. So accept that hard time that is there based on understanding of karma. That's what we discussed today. Then commit to doing our dharma, and that's what we'll be discussing tomorrow. And then transcend by practicing bhakti. So this was the broad map of what we are going to discuss. And then within the topic of karma, I discussed an acronym CHIT. C was what? Concept. With the concept, I discussed how Arjuna faced a very difficult situation. It was not just adversity, bad thing was happened to him. It was not just atrocity, a bad thing was done to him, but it was a agony. He had to do a bad thing, and he just didn't know what to do. He crumbled, collapsed at that time. So normally, when we function in life, we function the idea that action will lead to result. That is the basic framework. We discuss how this is universal, this is relational, this is scientific, it is everywhere we act accordingly. But when action does not lead to result, when say 100 leads to a result of 10, so we have 2 options. One is that its life is all senseless. Now, if we go to senseless, this is a path of darkness. And other is there is some bigger sense. It's a bigger sense that I cannot perceive right now. That can keep us having some hope. And that bigger sense is what? The principle of karma. I discussed karma broadly means 3 things. I discussed about ARCS. Karma refers to action, reaction, the connection between action and reaction, the law of karma, and then selection. And what do we select? So in the insight, what we discussed is that the result, while A to R is a universal principle, sometimes it could be that there's A1 plus A2 that leads to R, or it could be A can lead to R1 plus R2. So it's a little more complicated. So while it is possible for us to look at situations where we put in 100 and got 10, we can also look at situations where we put in the 10 and we got 100. So we discuss how life is. Life is fairly unfair. Everybody can look at places where life is unfair to them, and they can go down, and that was the trajectory that the Kauravas took. And or we can look at how life is fair to us, we can go up. That is the trajectory that the Pandavas took. So then we talked about how we have these situations that come in our life that those lead us to emotions, and eventually those lead us to actions. So ideally, we want to prevent negative situations from coming in our life, create a wall to prevent negative situations. At least we try to prevent them from creating emotions. Emotions come, we don't take actions. If actions come, we take them within boundaries. So we keep why? Because situations and emotions are reversible, but actions can be reversible. So that's where acceptance means what? The takeaway for us is that the principle of karma is not so much for judgment. I must have done something because of which I am suffering, or certainly not for others to tell them like that. It is what? Encouragement. That yes, I am going through a bad phase, but that doesn't mean that what I am doing right now is worthless. So encouragement we have, then what it means that we can, on one side, accept the present. When we accept the present, then that means we avoid two things. We avoid resentment, as resentment is an internal emotion, and externally is we avoid overreaction. And when we avoid these two things, then we all can move towards find out how to respond, how to act in a constructive way. And that's what we will discuss in tomorrow's session. I also discussed how for all of us we have a karma cloud above us. It's partly positive, partly negative, and this karma cloud keeps discharging, sometimes negatively, sometimes positively. But none of these phases are permanent. That's why if you're patient, then we can persevere through the dark phases and move ahead to a better situation. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Are there any questions or comments? Yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. So, Prabhuji, I just wanted to ask, now when this karma cloud you're mentioning, and there is a constant positive and negative discharge, how do I know whether at this moment I am in A1 or A2 or A3? Which A I am, that how will I come to know? And let us even assume that I'm in one of the A's. How do I know whether I'm going to get the R or R1, R2, R3? Because that timing and that specification in this very lifetime is also not very clear. So that how will I keep that hope over there which you have mentioned?
So when we are going through a situation where we are not able to figure out that is the action going to lead to result, or when will the result come, the result will come at all. So how do we act at that time? Much of this I'll talk about tomorrow in the principle of Dharma. But at one other level, two main points over there here. That in general, for all of us, when we look at the causality of something, this is a principle in Vedic Nyaya is logic, that whenever causality is, when we look at the cause of something, that is, always say if something bad is happening to me right now, a bad situation is coming. So the I principle is always start with the Drushtakara. Try to look at a visible cause. And then, if the Drushtakara does not make sense, then gradually move toward the Adrushtakara. So right now I'm speaking, and suddenly the mic goes off. Now, should I think that maybe Krishna doesn't want me to speak? That's why Krishna turned off the mic. Well, there is no need to escalate it to that level, isn't it? What I should see is, okay, has the battery got discharged, or is this mic defective? So always start with the immediate cause. The principle of karma is not meant to reject or override normal causality. Normal causality is normal cause effect connection. So it's only when the normal cause effect connection doesn't seem to work, then we can look at some bigger remote past life connections, past life causations. And over a period of time, we all start recognizing that which are the areas we are most likely to be affected. If we go back to the Pandavas themselves, we consider three Pandavas: Yudhishthir, Bhima, and Arjuna. So now, if this was a time when the kings and the leaders would actually fight, not that just they would be sending others to fight, like it happens in today's politics. So now there are reasons for that. And it's not a criticism of today's politics directly. But the point is that from that perspective, Yudhishthir was the eldest. He was going to be the king, but he was not the best warrior. He had Bhima, who was physically far more powerful, and in mace fighting also he was getting. And Arjuna was better than all of them in archery. And most of the wars happened. Archery skill was much more important than mace fighting or other skills. So Yudhishthir would have been insecure. I am the eldest brother. I am supposed to be the king, and you could say that the leader should lead by example. He was just not as good a warrior as his younger brothers. He could have been insecure. Now Bhima would have felt unfair. I am much stronger. Why was I not born as the eldest brother? Or he could have said that, why am I not as good an archer as Arjuna? So conversely, Arjuna would have felt insecure. If you consider there are five brothers, Nakul and Sahadev. So what happens? Arjuna is what they call the proverbial middle brother, middle son. Any family, if there are three children, so what happens? The middle son, middle child is often the most neglected child, isn't it? The eldest child gets all the attention, our first child, and the youngest child gets the attention. Oh, our darling, our baby of the family. So now Arjuna would have said that he is the middle child, and what happened was Arjuna often had to mediate between Yudhishthira and Bhima. So Yudhishthir was both of them were Kshatriyas, but Yudhishthir was more like a Brahman Kshatriya. He would like to discuss and bend backwards to avoid conflict. And Bhima was a Kshatriya Kshatriya, which is Kshatriya squared. He would be itching to fight. And there are many times that Arjuna was caught in between, and he had to balance both of them. And he was younger to both of them. So it was difficult for him. So my point is that everyone, even when they are trying, even when they are good people and they are working with other good people, still will have limitations. And we all have to look at how we can work most effectively within our limitations. So I'll conclude with my last point over here. That in general, the Gita talks about Guna Karma Vibhagasha. That for us, which is the area in which we are most likely to be effective? You look for which is the area in which we feel content acting. And if we have the guna for something, content means even if the world does not praise us for doing something, this is what I do. This is what I love. Some people just want to be teachers. Now they may get 5 people, they may 500 people, they may 5 million people on social media. But they just love to teach. Some people love to guide. Some people, all of us, there are some activities just get limited in such a way. Now that doesn't mean that's enough for surviving though. We also have to consider whether we can subsist and can grow in life. But that's where the second part comes is, are we competent? So if we have the karma for something, we are competent. So guna karma, so broadly speaking, if we can find even one or two areas where there's an intersection between these two, then that is where we are most likely to be. And that's where, so rather than worrying about where I'm in the negative phase or positive phase of karma, we can see what is it that I feel good doing, not feel good doing in sense of I like to watch TV and play video games, but then I'm doing something meaningful, I feel good doing it, and I am also able to do something well, and that's the area where we will be able to most likely achieve success.
Right. Thank you very much, Prabhu. One more point when we were talking about the quality, what are the definition of karma, there is one concept of untraceability, or there is no linkage, direct linkage. Action, result. We can't directly relate. How do we address that? And second, the one which you talked about, karma cloud. So it is just to relate to the current level. It is like we have cloud kitchen. You order something, you get it. Something which we have done in the past, now you are getting. Something you have ordered now, you will be getting later. Is that the relation that can be addressed?
So karma has one more feature of untraceability. Well, yes and no. No in the sense that, as I said, there is a basic principle of cause-effect connection. And there are Dushta Karan also. That if somebody is upset with me, I should be jumping to the conclusion because of a bad karma that this person has come in my life and taken my life. Yeah, maybe it is my bad karma, but it's not my past life bad karma. Maybe it is my past life's bad karma. Maybe I misbehaved with that person, I forgot about it. So in general, a certain level of degrees of intelligence, a certain level of introspection. Now, one aspect of intelligence is it, we use intelligence to detect cause effect connection. So an ordinary person may just feel, oh, I ate that food yesterday and my stomach is very upset. Doctor, no, you eat that food and you have this kind of system, then your stomach will get upset. So intelligence enables us to see cause effect connection. It enables us to do many things, but one aspect is helps us to see cause effect connections. So as much as possible, we should try to look for cause effect connections. But there is this basic understanding that in all areas of life, the, the human condition is that we often have to make huge decisions based on time information. It's just the way life is. Say when we choose a particular career, now how much can we know about it? That maybe say when India got independence, civil engineering was a very big thing. But now it's not that. Now maybe electronics computers is a big thing. Maybe that will change in future. So what happens is that life to some extent involves every area is a leap of faith. When we get married, how much can we really know about that? We can try to find out as much as we can. But how much can we? But even we can try to find out something about our potential life partner. But when we have a child, how much can we know about the child? Nothing. So in general, the very nature of the human condition is that often we have to make huge decisions based on, if not tiny, inadequate information. And that's the way life everywhere is. So we live within whatever information we have access to. So yes, some amount of karma is untraceable. And that's because life in general is very complex for us to figure out. And even science, the more it is advancing and figuring out how the world works, that actually the scientists are acknowledging that while we know much more than what we knew in the past, still there is so much more we don't know. Stephen Hawking was a very prominent scientist, and he said he would spend his whole life trying to come up with a theory of everything. And finally, he just gave up. He gave a very positive spin to him. Point spin to it. He said that I'm very happy to announce that humanity's quest for knowledge will never end. So the point is that's how life is. So we will all have some unexplainables now. Now the question is, based on those unexplainables, are we going to say that all of life is chaotic and there's nothing explainable in life? Or that okay, this is unexplainable, but there are other things that are explainable in my life and let me work on those. So basically, that if I am here, is life like it's an ocean of things that are explainable and there are some islands that are unexplainable? Or is it that the whole ocean is meaningless and some small island somehow we can make sense of it? So now if everything were meaningless, why would some things have some meaning? Isn't it? If the ocean itself is meaningless, then why would suddenly, if everything is senseless, then why would some things make sense at all? So it's quite likely that if there are things that overall seem to make sense, there are things sensible. Einstein said that the most incomprehensible thing about the universe is that it is comprehensible. And why does science work according to law? Why does science work at all? Why does nature work according to laws of mathematics, for example? Mathematical laws. Laws expressible in mathematical language. So this is a much more logical choice than this one. And there are some things I do not understand. But as which I can understand, if I understand, I can call it. And what is the second question about? Yeah, can we say it's like a cloud kitchen where we order and there's delayed delivery? Yes and no. It's because sometimes we may not necessarily have, nobody orders suffering. Suffering comes as a collateral damage or a consequence that we did foresee. Everybody is seeking pleasure. But tomorrow I'll talk about dharma and adharma, what it means. But certain pleasures, if they are sought, they will lead us to suffering. So we can't really say that when we are getting suffering, that is a delayed order. It is like the price for an order that we made earlier, and the price we were not aware. Yeah.
In the first question only, you gave an example of the mic is not working. So can we blame it on Krishna that he does not want to speak on it? So at some point of time, you will find immediate cause, and at some point of time you will either going to change mic or either you will go to some other option. So in real life, when we can decide that it's not working, then we have to shift it now from now.
So if something is not working, uh, is it that Krishna has created a system where we get confused and we can't figure it out? Like, is it because of an immediate cause? Is it because of some distant cause? And when, how do we work and when do we work? Well, at one level, we are finite beings. Now we could say, why couldn't Krishna have made us infinite? But then there's only one infinite being, and that is Krishna. So in every field of life, there are some axioms we start with. So in philosophy also, there are two approaches to philosophy. One is, why are things the way they are? Why are things the way they are? The other approach is, this is the way things are. How do I make best sense of it? This is the way things are. How to make sense? So broadly speaking, now while both approaches to philosophy are valid, this is broadly this seems to be the focus of our tradition, of the Bhagavad Gita, of the Bhagavatam. That this question, it almost leads to like what they call as endless regression. That once you start going in this direction, you just keep asking questions. There's no end. So so that brings us, this is called like more pragmatic philosophy. So is philosophy meant to help us figure out why things are the way they are, or is philosophy meant to help us live in the best possible way we can? So you could go to both approaches, but in general, the way is that I have to live life. Normally, when we meet someone for the first time, it's not that we ask, "What is your philosophy of life?" That's not a typical small talk or even a dinner conversation. But just because that's not a typical topic of conversation, does not mean that they don't have any philosophy. See, everybody has some unexamined or even uncontemplated philosophy. For example, for them, it may be like money is power. To get money, you'll be safe. If you have money, you'll be respected. Or for somebody, reputation is the most important thing. Somebody, family is the most important thing. These are not necessarily bad things, but I'm saying that if we consider philosophy as a search for truth, belief suppose, belief is love, suppose is truth, the search for truth, or tattva darshanaha, the seeing of the truth, that's the Sanskrit word. So that everybody has some conception of what is the bigger truth or what is the biggest truth. Say somebody thinks political power is the biggest truth, then their whole life is arranged as political power. So like that, see, we all have to face life. And when we have to face life, how can we make the best sense of it? So the fact is that we are finite beings. And as finite beings, there are going to be limits to how much we can do. So, in any area of life, we try to figure out. Say, one of my friends is customer care, works for Apple. So he says, now, that's another thing. He's customer support, customer care. Basically, see, those are jobs which are very rapidly getting lost because of AI. But the idea is, how does AI work? Or how do customer care ideally work? Is when there is a problem, you start with the lowest possible. So if somebody comes and my phone is not working, the solution could be, did you charge it? Or maybe you charge it, but your charger is not working. Let's try another charger. So you start with the most basic cause, and then you move forward, move forward. It's not that my phone is not working, give me a new phone as a reward. They'll not accept it. You start from smaller, 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 and you escalate to bigger. So that's the approach we use in every area. And point of philosophy is that as we take this approach further and further and further, are there still bigger areas that we don't think about, that we may not follow? So let's be open to that, and let's explore those bigger causes also. Does that make sense? Last question.
Guruji, there are some people who see glass half empty, and there are some people who see glass half full. Right? That means basically for every, basically trying to see how things can be done, focusing on solutions rather than focusing on excuses. So in that way, I'm talking about glass full and glass empty. So in this case, you are talking about this, putting an effort of 100 and then getting a result of -10. So, how, and there are people who are moving forward. We see that, they are seeing glass full and they are seeing solutions and they are moving. Is it just, we can say that it's because of their karma, or is it that mindset what they've got? Is it because of their karma, or
Good
is
point.
it that mindset?
Yeah. So if some people are moving ahead in their life, is it because of their karma, or is it because of, say, their positive mindset, where they see that glass is half full, not half empty? They look for solutions, not excuses. I think both are true. See, when we, I would say, when a particular result comes, when an action leads to a result, there are two extremes which it can go towards. That it is all because of only present karma. I worked so hard, I was so talented, I was so dedicated, that's why I succeeded. Or it's all because of past karma. And you just happen to be lucky. You just were in the right place at the right time, and that's how you succeed. Now, there could be elements of truth to both, but in general, it is that the most of the time the reality is both. That from our past karma, we might get some talent, we might get some abilities. Some people are just naturally more talented than others. Now, Sachin Tendulkar is considered the greatest cricketer in Indian history, if not world history. Now, he was hardworking, but he was just phenomenal talented. That talent is there actually. Now, from our present karma, there is comes in commitment. Now, generally, achievement results when talent meets commitment. So Arjuna had phenomenal talent, but he became the greatest archer not just because of that talent. He would practice tirelessly. He would practice so much. That's why one of the reasons his name was Gudakesh. So now, in some cases, some people may have a modest level of talent, but by a lot of commitment, they can also come to some achievement. Some people may have such a profuse talent that even with a little commitment they will come to achieve. But it is very rare that achievement comes only through one of these. See, that means, see, if somebody has become successful over a period of time, not just like a fluke success, like somebody, some player comes and one match hits a century and it's match winning century. Okay, you might just be lucky, you hit some shots and they don't get to winner, you are able to hit sixes. But if somebody is playing well again and again over years and decades, so that is not just because of past karma. See, because of past karma, because of present karma, we might just be lucky once in a while. Or rather because of past karma, we can get fortune, but we don't get achievement. There's a difference between fortune and achievement. Fortune means what? Somebody buy the lottery ticket and they win 1 crore rupees by that. That's fortune. That can happen. But if somebody has been at a job and they work, like some people are nowadays, everybody wants to have a startup. And some people are just geniuses at startup. They seem to have that Midas touch. They start something and just grows. Now, if you actually talk with these people, they are really intelligent. They may not be spiritually minded, but they are sharp. They are good at making decisions. That doesn't mean everywhere their character is good and everything. But basically, in most cases, it's a combination of talent and commitment. So, for us, when we see somebody's success, we can see what is there for us to learn. If somebody just has more talent than us, then we can accept that. This is, there's some ways life is not fair. So it's that person by past karma just has more talent. But sometimes we can see this person has more commitment. And one aspect of commitment is that they keep seeing the positive. They keep seeing that, okay, even if this has not worked out, this will work out. So they keep seeing positives and building on the positives, whatever they might be. So it is generally a combination of both. Now, since I was going to speak on this tomorrow, but I'll just complete with this. See, in general, the West has focused on present karma. That you work hard and you will succeed. That was, for example, the mood in the colonial times. Now, you may say colonialism is a bad thing, and of course, there's many bad things about it. But those who started off as explorers, they just got into ships, and they didn't even know whether there would be any land at the other end. They had a lot of courage over it, and they were very resourceful in many different ways. So the idea is that by focusing on present karma, that our fortune is in our hands. With that focus, the in the West they have made a lot of changes at the material level, and that is a very positive thing. Now, to some extent, in the East, I would not say in modern, especially in the medieval times, the East became it's all because of past karma. That if some terrible king is ruling us, it's all past karma. Then the history of humanity, there has been never any such thing as compared to the Britain ruling India. So there's a big difference between, say, various Islamic rulers ruling India and Britain ruling India. But most of these Islamic invaders, they made their home in India. Some were raiders who came and went. Now the British never made India their home. For them, India was a hot, disease-ridden, messy, uncivilized country for them. And to be posted in India, they thought of it like a punishment. Like Indians might think we posted in Andaman Nicobar or something. Not to criticize Andaman Nicobar. But the point is that they did it like that. And even at the top of British rule, like just a few thousand people. A few 100,000, let's say, but not a large number. There are millions of people. There's a British ruler, he's British historian or British politician. He said that when there was the Bengal famine, he said that if this had happened in UK, there would have been rebellion. Every single official would have been ripped apart from their limbs. These Indians just accept everything passively. And he attributed it to their fate in destiny. Now, so if we start attributing everything to past karma, then we become very passive. So now, what happens is, everything, when we focus on present karma, the positive is that we can make material progress, or you can say physical progress. But the problem is that there is mental distress. Because, see, what happens is if everything that I get is the result of my present karma only, if not use the word present karma, but just my actions, that if I have worked hard and not got result, that means something must be intrinsically wrong with me. That sometimes things may be beyond me. That is difficult to accept. So that's why, while there's material progress, there is mental distress. But to a large extent in India, if you consider, there is material stagnation that has happened because we accept all is destiny. But while there's material stagnation, to some extent, there is a significant level of mental peace. That there are people who are living in poverty, but even people who love poverty are not filled with like bitterness and resentment. It's not that people living in poverty are just waiting to find a gun to kill all the wealthy people. Some may be like that, but not everyone is like that. So there are positives and negatives of both. So ideally speaking, what should happen is that for things that are in our control, we should be focusing on present karma and acting. And for things that are beyond our control, we should be accepting it as past karma. That way, we can both be materially progressive and mentally peaceful. And that's what I'll talk about in tomorrow's session a bit. So thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki, Gaur Prema.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for enlightening us and for giving us the teaching us the secrets of laws of karma in an understandable and relatable ways. So we thank our Prabhuji by loudly chanting 3 times. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. We'll see you all tomorrow at 7 p.m. Also, that the book you were referring to is Prabhuji's famous book of prayers. So anyone who wants to purchase the book, they can purchase from the table behind you. Thank you so much.
So in that book, basically, I've taken the message of the Gita and there are prayers for various occasions. There are prayers when you feel lost or directionless, prayers when you feel misunderstood or abandoned, prayers when we feel very spiritually dry and disconnected from Krishna, prayers when we feel our desires becoming wild and unimagined. So how the Gita can be an inspirational prayer that described in that book. And this is my WhatsApp channel. Every day I post one question answer in the Bhagavad Gita, and also I have one prayer or one article on the Gita. And there are information about my programs.